Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. I'm Jason.
And I'm Stephen Ing.
And Steve here is a therapist with 30 years experience, so he knows what he's talking about.
I've got a lot more experience than that. I just had my 70th birthday, but I've got a lot of experience about a lot of things, but hopefully some of them are going to be good enough for everybody listening.
Cool. And how this works is I present a topic to Steve, which I had planned ahead of time, but Steve has no idea about, and we talk about it for an hour or so. And today's topic is how verbal abuse destroys relationships.
Whoa.
So before we kick off the conversation, if you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. At the end of each episode, Steve will answer a listener question, so stay tuned for that. And if you enjoy the podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, sharing it with your friends and family, just anything to get the word out. We really appreciate that.
So you haven't even asked me anything or led in with something conversational, but I want to start if that's okay.
Okay, I had something, but I'll let you go.
No. Now I feel bad.
No, go. It wasn't planned. Like it wasn't like if it doesn't go by this line, it's gonna fall apart. So
okay, because I have been made repeatedly aware, even in just the last few days, how many people have a hard time holding on to the very obvious truth that if they can't establish a safe relationship, then there's no point in holding on to anything else. Mm-hmm. And I have some clients, particularly those in groups, who realize this because they've heard it not just from me, but from others who make it work in their lives. And their clients I have who give me feedback, and they're actively working on this, men and women who meet wonderful people. They get started on a great love affair, and then, within a few months, figure out, oh, this person is verbally abusive. And there's a confrontation, and then usually an apology. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And I can commit to not doing that again. And then another incident. And then finally, what I call strike three. If by the third time they can't get it, I mean, come on, it's not that complicated an idea. It's time to step away because you're not there as their therapist helping them work through their issues. You're there as the boyfriend or the girlfriend. And the whole idea is to have a good time and enjoy each other's company. And it's such a fundamental thinking error to think, yeah, well, nobody has a really abuse-free relationship. Everybody has, a little trouble here and there, or they end up on the rocks a time or two. You can't just have that kind of standard. It's too tough. And is it really? I don't think it is, because although it may take a minute, especially for the person who's never thought about it before, how important it is to treat each other with respect, with courtesy, and with dignity. But even those of us who are truly mismatched, I mean, how hard is it to just say, this isn't really working out for me. I'm just not the right guy for you. Mm-hmm. We could say that and take a step away and move on with our lives. We don't have to have the, oh yeah, well, right back at you. We don't have to go through all that drama, especially for people who just, don't seem to be capable of letting go of the power that comes with abuse. And that's really what it is. In the end, it's about voluntarily laying down your weapon and accepting that you're powerless at a certain level in terms of controlling the other person. Because that's all any kind of abuse is. It's an attempt to control another human being. So that's what was on my mind.
Okay.
When you brought this up.
That's about accurate with what I was thinking. But I want to talk about the 3 strikes thing really quick. So sure. How does that work as far as like, it's like 3 strikes, it's like in a month or like over a year, or like, because it's like, what if it's not one of those things where it's like it happens 2 times and then you're just waiting, but then you get married and then it's like great marriage, and then all of a sudden it happens
10 years later.
It's like, oh, that's strike 3. It's like she's gone.
I'm sorry, sister. It's over between us. No, it's not like that. But the reason I have that rule for myself and I encourage others is because of the very common human trait of adaptivity. we humans are capable of adapting to just about anything. And I mean, in terms of social contact and love, putting up with really awful behavior. So if I'm not careful, I'll get systematically desensitized. I'll get used to it. And then I'll normalize the abuse. And then before you know it, now we've had, let's say, a year or 2 or 3 of intermittent but regular verbal abuse that is getting worse as time goes by.
Yeah.
Where we're calling each other out of our names, we're putting each other down, we're yelling, or one of my favorites from the past was to simply use that demeaning tone of voice that says, in all but words, "You are so stupid." And and it does take a minute to break those habits. And I'm not that rigid on the rule of 3, but in the dating phase, for sure, if in the early days of a new romance, they're already getting abusive in the first 90 days, they've already been abusive. I think that would be a 3 strikes and you're out kind of scenario for me.
Yeah.
Particularly if, and I really have to say this is an essential component. When 2 prospects are looking at each other, over a lunch or dinner date, and it's inevitable that the topic of, so what are you looking for in your life? Or what are you looking for in a relationship? And if that doesn't come up from the other person, then every listener should be bringing it up, right? And if you bring it up, then you also eventually get to respond after you listen to the other person about what you're looking for. And one of the things I'm hoping we all have memorized by now is I'm looking for an abuse-free relationship based on equality. And if that comes out a little too easily, I think it's really common for people to nod their heads and really kind of not hear it. So I encourage people to go to some effort to try to define what they mean by abuse-free. And usually the yelling, screaming, name calling, put downs, and even the tone of voice, I think all of that kind of covers most of the verbal abuse. And I'm sure there are exceptions to that. Like right now, I'm thinking even just putting down your family or attacking your friends, putting down your friends. I think those are forms of verbal abuse. And but what if she really is a bitch? is usually what I get. When somebody's talking about a friend or your mom or somebody else. Yeah. And I say, well, okay, kids, you want to put your hands over your mother's ear now because I'm going to say something vulgar. But I often, especially in a men's group, I'll say, I don't know, but I want you to imagine whether or not it was possible that your grandmother, I say to him, that your grandmother ever performed oral sex on your grandfather.
Yeah.
And most of my male clients in the sanctity of a men's group will say, after shrugging, looking up at the sky, they'll say, well, I guess. Okay. So even though it would be perfectly accurate, would it be acceptable for you to call your grandmother a cocksucker?
Yeah.
And everybody just, their face falls and it's just like horrible. And it's like, no, of course not. So it isn't really about truth. It's really about what is the intent. And if my intent is to put you down, if my intent is to control you, then really almost any name will do. I remember I was caught and hoisted by my own petard in a relationship with a wonderful woman. It didn't work out between us, but she confronted me because at one point I said in our relationship, I think you're being a poor sport. And she confronted me about my use of a put down or a name calling.
Yeah.
It was kind of a little of each. And I just had to stop in my tracks. I mean, dead to rights. She had me.
Yeah.
That was absolutely true. And I did what I would hope everyone listening to this would do. And hopefully it's all of us who know better, who get caught first, to say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, to tender a sincere apology and to confirm or attest that you will never do that again. And that's what I did with her. And for those who are still looking for the perfect book on apologizing, you don't need one. It's a two-step process. Number one, you acknowledge what you did wrong. Number two, you offer a sincerely felt expression of remorse. I am so sorry.
And then number three, you try not to do it again.
Right? Well, yeah, we all expect a sincere effort, but that's not part of the apology.
That's not. Oh, yes.
That's part of the follow through, right? And
it sounds like we need a book on apologies now,
because there are 3 steps. So for me, this whole verbal abuse thing, it can be really easy, and it's also easy for us. I mean, it's easy to perpetrate, and it's also easy to go into denial about it, because none of us like to use that word abuse. I think those of us who are male in this country have kind of gotten used to it, because typically we're the villains in these marital scenarios, right? These relationship scenarios where if somebody's going to be abusive, I'll take the over. It's going to be a man every time. Yeah. But that's not really how humans work. Women can be very good with their language skills and are as often guilty of being verbally abusive or controlling, if you like that word better, as men. I think it's just so uncomfortable for most women to consider this dark part of their character, that they could ever be guilty of such a thing. I think most men are, to be honest, have a lower what would you say? A lower expectation of themselves. They have a kind of a sheepish acceptance. Yes, I know I'm slime. I screwed up again. I'm sorry. But it's whoever it is, whether it's easy or it's hard, you just got to do it. And if your mate can't do it, or the person you're dating can't do it, then 1 strike is as good as 3.
Yeah. And why is it so important to do it, to call it out?
Again, because of that whole business of systematic desensitization and the fact that we can get so used to it. Yeah, if I let the person talking to me get away with abusing me, then what they've learned is A, it's acceptable, and B, they can repeat as needed, in order to castigate me for some bad behavior or inspire me to better myself by pointing out just what a wreck I am. And I think none of it, that's why I think it has to be confronted 100% of the time. You don't want to set up an intermittent reinforcement schedule or something like that. So you want to be able to make sure they know that, oh no, it's going to be really not worth the trouble to put this person down, because they're going to confront me each and every time. And I'll submit, this isn't just for romances. I think this is for any of our relationships, including friends we socialize with, acquaintances. I think it's vital to do with your parents. Once you're grown up, kids, don't do that when you're still smaller than mom and dad. But when you're grown up, I think it's important to do it each and every time. And of course, the fear in the back of everyone's mind is, but if I keep doing that, pretty soon I won't have anybody. And to which I will say something very comforting. It's far lonelier being in relationships with the wrong people than it is being alone on your own.
Yeah, that's a big truth.
It really is. I think whether we're talking about lovers or friends or spouses, I think, or even a workplace situation, if I'm working for somebody who thinks it's normal to put workers down, then I need to get the heck out of there. Of course, after I have found my next job.
Yeah. What about though jokes in friendships or relationships that, those jokes that cut kind of deep and that are right on the cusp of being, it's funny, but it's also like
a bit of a put down,
and probably something that the person who receives the joke knows that it's that, and the person giving it knows it's that.
right?
So
and then
it's
if you complain or confront me, then I say, what's wrong with you? Can't you even take a joke?
yeah, exactly.
And so then I minimize it and all of that. So look, I'm gonna be real human about this, and I'm gonna tell you it's complicated.
Yeah.
But only by one variable. And that one variable is it depends on the relationship, because my clients who really know me and who know that I love them and I care about them, I can say things like, shut the F up. And they start laughing because it's so untypical of me and it's so absurd and not like me. And it is a mutually held joke. But if I'm making a joke at your expense, and that's a whole different thing. Or if I'm making a joke early in the relationship and you or the woman I'm dating doesn't really know that I actually am like wrapped around her little finger, or that I would die for you, given the right circumstances. If you have that kind of camaraderie with another man, I think as a man, it's pretty easy to take those jokes and because it's a joke, because that relationship is on solid ground. But if it's just one-sided and it's always that other person, and it hurts like heck every time they do that, and you hope it hurts because you don't want to get so used to it, it's like you don't even notice it anymore. But if it's really hurting, then I would say that person making those jokes really doesn't have that kind of relationship with you. And I've confronted a number of people about that. We're not solid like that. We don't have that kind of relationship where you can make jokes about my wife or make jokes about my family or make jokes putting me down. That's not going to work for me. Yeah. And most guys will say, oh, I'm sorry. Most of the time people will say, I'm sorry. But I'm not against that kind of humor. I think it's okay. And all of my clients tease me that way. Because again, we have a loving, mutually respectful relationship. Yeah. So the part of the humor is how utterly absurd and unexpected it is to be talking to each other that way.
Yeah. But you also never know, though. It is kind of taking a risk, because I had a friend for 20 years, which we've talked about in this podcast. And it kind of started off where he was one of the people who liked the joke a lot, and he liked those jokes at the other person's expense. So meaning me. And I was never one of those people to just dish it right back. Like every now and again, I would come up with something, but I wasn't. It was like he was like finding it, but it was like he was finding it in ways that pinpointed like core parts of my personality. And through many, many years, it just became normalized. And I was also just like, whatever. I'm like, it was funny, and I was into comedy. So I appreciated the joke, but then it was like slowly chipping away for 20 years. And then finally, like, he did become a friend who wasn't really a friend. And then I felt really bad. And then I was like, man, I should have called that out. Cause I remember even back when I was 21 and we were hanging out, he would say some things about my chosen profession. Like I was going to be a cop, and he'd be like, you're going to be a shitty cop. You're and this and that. And then things with my girlfriend, he would make fun of us, like how we like interacted with each other, how we had sex with each other. And it was like, I remember like being like, what is this guy's deal? Like it was like the intuition was kicking off back then, but then I remained friends with him, and it was that became the relationship. And throughout the years, that's kind of like what it was, and it eventually faded and ended. But I like those, but I have also other friends too, that we do have that sort of joke stuff too, but it's never, I don't know. I think you could kind of tell when it's like really directed at you. At least I feel like I could, but I ignored it.
Well, I've known you now for, I guess a couple of years, and we've logged a number of hours together, but I still don't feel like I have that kind of relationship with you where I would, drop some sort of humorous put down, because I don't think we're solid that way. And our relationship is more formal because we work together. Yeah. And it's not like I don't think we'll ever get there, but I don't think I'm there with you yet. And I think you've done some gentle teasing with me. I've done some gentle teasing, I guess, with you. Yeah. But it's on a whole different level, and it's much easier for me to accept. And I just think there has to be a foundation of love for that kind of thing. And I think couples uh, better be pretty skilled at that kind of communication, because, like, with my wife, we've been together 30 years, and I was even old when I met her, and now I'm 30 years older, and it's like scary, right?
Yeah.
So she'll say, "All right, old man," and she'll say it in a very stern voice. But it's hilarious every time she does it. Why? Oh, because she's so gentle and kind that is an anomaly for her. She would never do something like that outside of the realm of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes part of our intimate shtick that the two of us do. And I can appreciate that a lot, because it is intimate. It means we've worked through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And in my prior relationship, I would say, yeah, the put downs were not in that same spirit. And so I just don't want to go back to that. But there's an existential issue here. And I hope I haven't turned off half our audience by bringing up the word existential, but it's about, at the end of the day, it's about who you think you are and who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if I was with some partner who was really very passive and willing to take abuse, like flat out take it, do I want to become an abusive man?
Yeah.
And the answer to that has been and always will be no. I do not want to be an abusive man. So if I don't want to be an abusive man, then I don't get to be abusive. And that is the end of that. So I can't even go there unless, again, as I said, it's a very well understood kind of form of communication between two people who really know how solid they are.
Do you think that people can develop intimacy based on abuse?
Wow. You mean like an SM partnership?
Well, maybe, but it's unconscious. That's just like, how some people, it's kind of like everything you see in like TV shows, movies. It's just prevalent all the time. It's just like, that's just how we treat each other. That's how she is. That's how he is. And we like being in this like relationship.
Yeah. And I've been accused of being too sensitive, and which is actually a moniker I'm willing to carry around, because I think it's not an albatross around my neck to be too sensitive. I think being sensitive is actually a good thing. It's like having good hearing or good eyesight, and being able to know what I'm feeling and being in touch with my feelings and knowing I don't like it when they talk to me that way. I think that's just fine. I have no desire to change that.
My friend would disagree.
Yeah, your friend could suck it. But I don't even know him. But I think
he can suck it.
It's just, I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah.
For me, it's.
Do you think that they're like blind to this thing that they think is existing and that is love, but it's really just not? It's just dysfunction.
Well, one of my values. I know we're probably all sick of hearing that expression, family values, but I'm not. I'm not coming at this from a religious point of view, and I think family values have little or nothing to do with how you vote or how you stand on given political policy decisions. But I think one of my family values that I have learned from both some amazing friends and from my wife is the value of loyalty. And I think my making people laugh at your expense is a demonstration of disloyalty, that I'm willing to throw you under the bus to get a laugh out of other people and climb up on your back socially, but, demonstrating how clever I am with my word choice. And I think that's really just disappointing when I see that. And it's disappointing to me when I see it when anybody is doing it, to be at a social gathering where a wife is putting down her husband and then laughing, or a husband's putting down his wife. And you can see that it bothers the other person who's the subject of the put down. But in the interest of appearing to be a good sport, there's that haunting phrase, they try to laugh, and you can see on their face they're uncomfortable with it, and that it's not really working for them. So, for me, it is part of love. Loyalty is part of love. And when we talk about love, and this whole podcast idea is about managing love intelligently. And if we're going to manage love intelligently, we have to accept that there is a fairly large, thankfully a minority, but it's still a large minority of human beings out there who are incapable of having loving relationships. And that friend of yours who, spent years putting you down, he never figured that out. And I would say, as a friend, I would have to grade him as a epic fail. Yes. And that's the other thing about this from that existential point of view. If I'm an abusive man, it's only a matter of time before not only do I make jokes at my friends' expenses, I'll make jokes at anybody's expense.
Yeah.
As long as I think I can get away with it. And that would include a girlfriend or a spouse. And so I think it's one of those telltale signs that you're probably dating the wrong person if that's how they express their humor, is through putting other people down on the regular.
Yeah. And then again, just going back to like think of like society, like TV shows, movies, even like books we read. It seems like there's no real standard. Like most of that is drama. Most of that's done to entertain. And it's like a healthy relationship isn't even something that would be depicted in our society's eyes because it's not interesting, quote unquote, right. Or that, so they don't think it's interesting. But then it becomes so normalized, and then I think we become desensitized, and then you just think it's normal. So then when you have someone like you being like, 3 strikes, you're out, no abuse. It's like, at first I'm like, oh, wait, what? It's like, because you see it all the time with your friends' relationships, with your parents, maybe with other people's parents. You see how they treat each other, and it's like, that would be abuse. That would be abuse. That's, it's like, it's just, right. And it's just flowing just normally.
It is. And I think that's one reason why so many of us have been miseducated into thinking that it's normal. When actually, when we think about it, just what you said is true. These are dramas or comedies, and the comedies to me are hearkening back to the old Punch and Judy shows, where they would have the puppets beating each other over the head with a stick, and that's what passed for humor back, hundreds of years ago. And I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's interesting. But when you have a very naive audience, which I think the original audiences were for the Punch and Judy shows, and where domestic violence was a regular part of their lives anyway, they were thoroughly desensitized to it, and then thinking it's hilarious, when he or she starts beating the other person over the head. When it's in a drama, I kind of expect some of that in a drama, where it's not comedic, because drama is about conflict. And conflict isn't always neat and tidy, and it's not only purely intellectual, and it's, it can be very messy. And, we have those wonderful writers, and I'm not sure who to give the credit to, if it's Truman Capote, but I don't think it is. I think it's As I Lay Dying. Who's the author of As I Lay Dying? Sure. Oh my gosh. We'll
could look it up.
Yeah, we'll have to. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but
Faulkner.
William Faulkner, I think, is the one who originally came up with the idea of murder your darlings. Okay. And, that's part of drama. So we can accept that, even betrayal and abuse are a normal part of a drama, and people working through things and giving the villain some room to be truly villainous, the hero a chance for he or she to overcome that. But none of us think, oh, this is ideal behavior. It's we don't think it's respectful. And I have had clients who are so used to it, they say I don't see what's wrong about it. It's so normal, just like you were pointing out.
Yeah.
And in our society, it is normalized, and it's so pervasive. And as Exhibit A of how boring it is to not be that way. Yeah, I have to say, my wife has never abused me in all the years we've been together, and it's just so boring to be loved and respected all day long, every day. It's like being on this endless cruise ship where you're just so happy all the time. What a nightmare. It's boring. It would be boring maybe for others to watch, because I get that, but it's not actually boring to live in it.
But some people would find it boring, right? But then is that their like childhood traumas? Is that?
Well, that's I'm just jumping up and down. That is such a great point. And I've had so many people, both male and female, tell me that would be boring because they're used to the drama, and they'll normalize it by saying things like, well, yeah, I could never have an abuse-free relationship with somebody. In my family, we're Italian. Yeah. And we call it like we see it. Or in my family, we're Irish. In my family, we're German. And in my family, everybody's got either an ethnic anchoring them to some kind of abusive behavior. Or I've even heard, well, we're redheads. Or I'm from this part of the country or that part. I'm from New Jersey.
What do redheads do? Are they just fiery? Or
supposedly, they're known for being very passionate, including not just passionately loving, but also passionately angry. Okay. I don't know if there's any truth to hair color and the state of one's emotions, but I just don't think that any human is beyond the ability to learn how to treat others respectfully, including those who say, well, I couldn't help it. If you were that mad, you would have done something too. And I usually say, because I have a forensic practice in the main, I'll say something like, well, okay, so if you were in court and just before passing sentence, the judge said something like that to you, would you yell and scream at the judge? Would you start putting the judge down? Well, no. And why not? Well, he's a judge and that would go badly for me. Exactly. You have the ability to control yourself. It's not an impulse control disorder. You have the ability to control yourself. It's just you've done a rapid calculation and you've decided, yeah, I can get away with this. Or if there is any consequence, it's certainly worth the tremendous payoff of putting this person down.
Yeah. And the judge puts you in a physical jail,
right?
But the partner could put you in a mental jail.
Well, I like the way you're thinking of these metaphors. I'm not sure how I would apply that, but if the point for me is, yeah, we all have control. Even the psychopath has control. He just has to be persuaded that the price of doing this behavior is way too expensive, considering what he'd be getting in return. So once the reward diminishes, the behavior itself usually diminishes too.
Well, what if the reward is a better relationship with more connection and more intimacy and more safety?
Because all those relationships, they get better with additional abuse?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
No, if he didn't abuse, if he was treating the person like he would treat the judge.
Yeah. I think, for the truly ill that I'm thinking of, those with serious personality disorders like narcissism or antisocial personality disorder, they're not ever going to achieve intimacy unless they got some serious help. And most of the time they don't even want that help.
Yeah.
So, but they'll be on good behavior as long as they think there would be a price they're not willing to pay.
Yeah. Okay.
The woman born with the silver spoon in her mouth who is heir to the toilet paper fortune that her parents set up, or the porta potty, or I don't know why my brain is on
toilet humor,
but if he realizes, no, I'll lose everything, and I don't want to. If I do that with her, she won't let me get away with it. But that doesn't mean he's given it up. He'll just look for a readier victim.
And then, so say you're in one of these relationships where it's past 3 strikes and...
Oh, it's been going on for years.
Yeah.
And you'd like to do something about it, but where do you start?
Yeah, I guess we could go there to start. And then, so yeah, what if it's like someone's listening? It's like, wow, I just realized I've been being verbally abused for the last 20 years.
Well, here's the motivation, I think, is not, gee willikers, I'm being abused, and that's just wrong. It's more like, I'm never going to have the relationship I would want if I continue to put up with abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything I can do about this? Well, yeah. If the person you're with is able to control their behavior, then yes, you can talk to them about this. And of course, you would start off with acknowledging Stephen Ng and saying, I heard this fantastic podcast recently, and it just opened my eyes to everything we've been missing. But however it is that you go ahead and say it, to be able to put your cards on the table and this is what I want, this is the way I'd like to live our lives from now till the end. Can you get down with that? And for the other person who's listening, maybe they too would be open. But there are plenty of people who are not going to be willing to give up their power that they're enjoying. And at that point, I would say, walk away. Just walk away and think about it. Think about what you want to do. Because now it's sort of too late. The truth is now out. Oh, I've made this deal with the devil in exchange for not being alone. I have to sign up for being willing to endure lifelong verbal abuse. Is that a good deal? And for most of us, for me, that would not be a good deal. I don't want that deal.
And really quick, so what if they were like, if they were receptive, your partner was receptive, is that something they could work through together? Or do you suggest they go to therapy for that, to kind of enter into the therapy session to be like, I listened to Stephen Ng, Managing Love Intelligently, and this is what I learned, and I presented it with her, and we want to work through, like, just kind of clear the stuff from the past. Like,
yeah, we would like to develop an abuse-free relationship. Can you help us?
Yeah.
And most therapists are going to say yes, but many of them are lying. And the reason they're lying is because they themselves don't realize what you were just talking about a moment ago, and that's the broad acceptance of most forms of verbal abuse, so much so that it's on TV every hour of the day.
It's just in our nature, I feel like, at this point.
Well, I think if ignorance is a part of human nature, yes.
It is. Look at the world, Steve.
But people who listen to this podcast are no longer going to be able to afford themselves of that particular excuse. The reason I say this is because I have had men in my practice who got excited about the idea of the abuse-free lifestyle. And they definitely wanted to be in an abuse-free relationship. And they started confronting, this one story is one I'll just never forget. This guy started confronting his wife non-abusively. And he would say things like, look, that's abuse. I'm not willing to take that. I don't abuse you and I need you to stop abusing me. Not exactly fighting words, right? And he also would say things like that to her two grown-up daughters who were residing in the home.
And they were being abusive too.
They were all three were being abusive of him. And he agreed to go with them to their family therapist that they were seeing. And the therapist basically confronted him and said, well, wouldn't, because they were complaining that he was always talking about not wanting to be abused. And they just, more than anything else, wanted him to stop that. The therapist had asked the question, what more than anything would you like to get out of therapy? Not a terrible question. And the three of them agreed. The three women agreed they would like him to stop talking about abuse. And the therapist looked at him and said, well, how about it? Would you be willing to stop talking about abuse? And he looked at her like she was, crazy. And he said, well, I would be willing to give it up if they would all be willing to stop being abusive. And that's when the therapy session fell apart, because the therapist couldn't explain that this was not merely a moral issue. It is a moral issue. It's wrong to treat people like that. That's why we use the word abuse. There's a difference between the appropriate use of human beings as friends and family, as employers or employees. Those are all appropriate. And it's appropriate to give orders to underlings or for sergeants to give orders to recruits. I understand that, and that too is appropriate. But to control somebody who is in my family as a spouse or a girlfriend, to verbally abuse my children. That's just the wrong way to treat human beings. They were never meant to be treated that way. Okay, so there is a moral issue in that. But more than that, there's also that existential issue I mentioned. Is this how you really want to live your life? Is this the way you want to be? Is this who you are? Because even if it was morally somehow acceptable, most of us have a repugnance. We are to the whole idea of abuse. We're dismayed by it. We find it unattractive once we think about it. It isn't a matter of, I know politically right now, I think a lot of people have abuse confused with the word strong. And then if you complain about abuse or you call it out, then you are weak. I think that would be similar to your friend.
Yeah.
Who at his heart is a fascist, I have to tell you.
Yeah. He's a lot of things.
but when that existential issue of your identity and how you want to live your life and what kind of family do you want to build, what kind of home and relationship are you building? For most of us, once we think it through, we don't want that. Mm-hmm. We want something that's loving, kind, and respectful all the time. And even if we have problems, even if we disagree or have arguments about, you name it, could be anything, we can have those disagreements without abusing each other. And we can explain ourselves. And I think the arguments would be much cleaner, they would make much more sense, and we would get to a resolution of the conflict much more easily. Because when I start attacking someone who's talking, I'm arousing their amygdala. They're getting that into that whole fight or flight scenario. And thinking clearly is the last thing on their mind. Mm-hmm. So, and we know this from research. If you give a person a typical math test that they could solve easily, let's say in 10 minutes, and then you give them a same test, with the same degree of difficulty that they could solve easily with 100% accuracy in 10 minutes, but then you start yelling at them while they're taking the test, you start putting them down verbally, even in a normal volume, or you start using a demeaning tone of voice, even while you're reading the dictionary at them, I think that would be so off-putting that they wouldn't be able to think clearly and they wouldn't perform at the same level. So if you like success, if you like solving problems quickly and moving on with your life, there's no room in that scenario for abusive behavior, including the verbal abuse we're talking about in this episode of Managing Love Intelligently.
And what happened to the guy in that relationship then with the therapist?
They ended up going their separate ways. Yeah. So it's just, because so many of us are not willing to give up our power.
That's what it is, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, because any attempt to impose my will upon another is an act of violence, according to Gandhi. And I think it's an exaggeration, but I think it makes that point that it's
kind of similar to what you say. You say anything less than respect is abuse, and it's kind of
yeah.
So you're kind of a Gandhi.
Oh, geez,
That's like a compliment, but also like a joke too.
So for me, it's absolutely incomprehensible to me that some people would try to make excuses for abusive behavior, including your former friend, that he would make excuses for it. Because once you pencil it out, there's no happy ending for the relationship that's committed to ongoing intermittent abuse.
No, I've seen how it ends.
Yeah.
It's not a fun story.
No, and it never works out in terms of solving problems in general. If you had a boss who was screaming and yelling at employees, nobody wants to bring him bad news. Nobody wants to tell him the truth if it's unpleasant. So he ends up building a cocoon of ignorance around himself and not really knowing what's going on. And we all could build that in our lives if we wanted to. And also the other thing I think we're all looking for, and at least those of us who can do it, is love. And love, by definition, is completely antithetical to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
There is no universe in which love is, you have a compartment of abuse within the category of love. And I think this, I didn't mean to talk about religion, but here it is. I think when we, go to any kind of a fellowship, and I've been to all kinds of religious groupings in the past, whether they were Christian or Muslim or Jewish, but I have yet to be to some of the other more rare ones in the United States. But when people first meet you, they're usually very polite and respectful. And then, and their language, part of the sales job of embracing our religion is that it's going to be better for your life. You'll have it's an elective procedure like getting a nose job. Mm-hmm. And but who would get a nose job if 50% of the people lost their nose in the process? It's
a funny concept.
Right.
I like that idea.
I thought it's kind of a high risk to reward ratio. You could end up with a perfect nose, or you might lose it. Flip a coin. And when it comes to abuse or religion, we all would like to have, a form of spirituality that bettered our lives. There's nothing to resist in that idea. But typically, in my experience, I have yet to see a single religion out there where these highfalutin ideals and these great spiritual concepts are not contaminated by ongoing transactional abuse. Mm-hmm. That is the opposite of love and respect and compassion. It could be a group of Buddhists, a group of Christians, a group of Hindus, Muslims, Jews. It just doesn't matter. It's antithetical to everything the religion supposedly stands for. Mm-hmm. But then it will be usually defended. If you call it out for what it is, then it will be usually defended as, he's just preaching the word as it is, or he's mm-hmm. telling it like it is. He doesn't mince his words when he's preaching the gospel, or when he's, calling people out, because he's saving souls, damn it.
Yeah.
And I find that fairly comedic in itself, except that real people get hurt. And that's why the DSM-5 text revision does include a portion on spiritual abuse, because people go for spiritual answers and a better spiritual life, some spiritual direction, some meaning to their lives, some context for what's going on around them. And then quite often they end up getting abused. Mm-hmm. Just kind of like a romance, right? We get into romances because we want our lives to be better. And then comes the abuse. And it's sort of better. I mean, maybe occasionally they're having sex, or they're having sex as regularly as they want. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they have more financial security, sort of, at a given level. All they got to do is put up with the abuse.
Yeah, that's it.
And isn't that a fair trade? Is that too much to ask?
And then I want to go really quick to dating. So say you are on a date, and say you're on like 60 days and you reach that third strike, you're out. Would you recommend people just end it, or and just say no thank you, or to explain why you're ending it to the person? Just,
kind of all of the above. I like all those options, actually. And I would also add even a third, which is going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm not. If somebody is really sincerely trying, and we can kind of tell, if we're honest with ourselves, we can tell. And they've had a history, perhaps a family history going back into their childhood where this was unacceptable behavior, and they did it, a third time. Mm-hmm. As long as I get the idea they're really trying and they're very sincere and they're apologizing, then I would be really open to it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of therapists understand that you can build in consequences. Like, I remember one family I was working with, one of the partners was claiming to have a really hard time with this. And I said, I can believe that. I can believe that it's really hard. And it is a difficult spiritual path. It means giving up power, and it means really changing the dynamics of the relationship transactions going on. But I'm willing to help you as long as you're willing to commit to doing what I tell you, so long as it's not illegal or morally wrong. Would you be willing to do that? Mm. Then people stop, because they start pondering oh my God, what is this monster of a therapist going to come up with? And depending on the, usually, I mean, but they're now boxed into a corner.
Yeah.
As long as it's not morally wrong, and as long as it's not illegal, why would they resist a goal that they say they want?
Mm-hmm.
So I ask them if there's any, once I've got their assent, yes, I would be willing to do that. And once I get their assent, I say, okay, so, and then depending on the situation with the couple, if they're just dating and not living together, I'll say, so the next time you're caught out and you agree you were abusive, you owe her $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And please don't worry. If that's not enough, we can raise that over time. Yeah. And at that point, the person who's been getting abused, imagine I was doing that with you and your friend.
Yeah.
The person getting abused starts to sit up a little taller.
Yeah. Like, I'm going on vacation.
Yeah. I mean, that individual starts feeling a little happier. Now they're actually looking forward to getting abused verbally. Mm-hmm. And the other person is a bit crestfallen because they've already committed themselves to eliminating the abuse, if in fact that's where we are in therapy. Mm. And now it's put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And if they're already living together, I'll often say something like, well, let's pick a charity that you really like. And if he's a Republican, I'll say something like, how about the Democratic Party? And no, I hate Democrats. Or if vice versa, if it's a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And I'll say the same thing. You're going to be writing a check to Joe Biden or Donald Trump or to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And that will be every time you get caught out being abusive. Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly the abusive behavior is utterly extinguished.
Yeah.
Never happens again. This thing that just couldn't be helped. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. But generally speaking, and I would say over 90% of the cases, the other person is just not invested in having an abuse-free relationship. They're not ready for it because it really isn't that complicated.
Yeah. And would you say that we do this to ourselves and that people just like, do you think people even know that there's another way to live?
I don't think most people realize that it's optional. You know, that I was told once in a similar way by someone who attended AA that he had learned in his program that in life, pain was inevitable, but misery was optional. And in the same way, I would say in life, pain is inevitable, but taking abuse is optional. So in a sense, those of us who've been in abusive relationships for years, I mean, we're really guilty of having participated in building that.
Yeah.
You know, that's on us.
Yeah. I did that with my friend. You got to own it and look at it and do the whole intentional debriefing on it and be like, when did it start? And then you see it's where it started in the beginning and you're like, oh my God, what's wrong with me?
Right. And then, but that pain of taking responsibility for it, because it hurts the ego. I don't want to admit there's anything wrong with me. But once I embrace that I've had this self-defeating pattern of passively accepting abuse, then I can begin to fix it. I can do something about it because, again, it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
It's just difficult. It's simple, but it's difficult, like so many important things in life. It's simple to say, oh, I just need to speak up for myself, or I just need to confront my abuser, or I need to terminate that relationship. But all of those things, I think, are emotionally difficult to do.
Yeah. And I think that's why it sounds so simple, verbal abuse, and just taking that out could have such an impact on the relationship. And like you said, again, coming back to the beginning, like the safety, I think it's about intimacy and then safety. And those are the building blocks of what we're trying to build when we're managing love intelligently.
Yeah. For the listeners out there, I just pray you're not one of, and I pray to an unknown God. I haven't met him yet. But if you are one of those poor unfortunates who cannot see that before you can have a good relationship, you must first establish a safe relationship. I pray for you because I don't think there's any hope for you in this world. That is really thick-headed. If you can't see that it's so important to establish safety so that you can begin to establish intimacy and really get close to someone, it's logically never going to work out. So there's, what else is there for you but prayer?
Yeah. And that requires no abuse to get to that safe level, correct?
Well, yeah, if I walk into my house, or if I walk into this relationship knowing that at any time the other person can go ahead and abuse me, how safe could I possibly feel? That's so incredibly thick-headed to think you'd still be all for that relationship and looking forward to seeing him or her, later. When, just think about it, if you can't count on that 100%, then you don't even have the loyalty of the other person as to your safety. How could you possibly have a good relationship if they're not participating in your safety? And what's ironic about this, I've talked to a number of people who are in the BDSM community, and safety is one of their most important values.
Yeah.
And isn't that ironic that people who have such a sexual lifestyle that includes flogging and putting people in stocks and all kinds of other ritualized violence against one another, those people feel far safer in their relationships with each other than most Americans do in their relationships in their own home.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Something to think about. All right. So to wrap up, we have a listener question. And again, if you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. This week's question is as follows. Your episode on polyamory sparked deep introspection regarding intimacy in both romantic and platonic relationships, prompting me to reflect on my journey through various relationship dynamics. Then your discussion on the loneliness epidemic further amplified my contemplation. I'm intrigued by the potential correlation between the rise of ethical non-monogamy and its potential of being a response to societal loneliness. Do you perceive any meaningful connections between these two evolving trends?
Wow. Okay. That was so thoughtful. I'm not even sure I understand it, but it was really good. Mm-hmm. So the two trends would be reduction in loneliness or the growing loneliness?
Correlation between the rise of ethical non-monogamy and its potential of being a response to societal loneliness.
I do think I might have a thing or two to share on that regard. But first of all, I have to thank that writer. It was such a very vulnerable and thoughtful question. I think when we are miserable, we often grasp at straws. I think we all can agree to that. I know when I'm miserable, I'm not thinking at my very best. And it's funny, whether it's, you think about going shopping and for groceries, and we're all warned, don't go shopping when you're hungry, right? Because if you do that, you're impulsively going to be grabbing at things, putting them in your shopping cart, and your grocery bill is going to be enormously higher than if you go to the grocery store with a full stomach. And I think the same is true both individually and societally. When we have a society that's miserably lonely, they begin grasping at solutions, one and all solutions that come their way, looking desperately for something that works. And I would add, along with polyamory, would be something that almost all of us have done, is desperately just throwing ourselves into a whirlwind romance before actually having done the footwork to establish whether or not it was safe and whether or not we were genuinely with someone capable of truly loving us. So we see a lot of this already in our lives. And I would add, even if you take a look at it, people who idealize their religious experiences at church as and putting up with the abuse at church, putting up with the abuse from a lover, putting up with the abuse from a social circle. There are all kinds of desperate grasping after solutions, right? So there's a lot of that going on. And I could see polyamory. One of the wonderful things about our society here in America is we still have a very high degree of freedom, because polyamory would not be acceptable in other countries that are very sexually repressive. But in this country, if people really think that it's going to work for them, I can't say that I've experienced that, and I'm really open, and I'm sure there are wonderful people out there who've had positive experiences, and that it's really helping them. And even if one polyamorous relationship, or as it's known, a polycule, doesn't work out, that doesn't mean the idea itself is flawed. It's like any monogamous matrimonial experience. Just because it didn't work out with one partner doesn't mean it'll never work out. So I'm pretty open-minded on that, and open-minded to the idea that it might be really helpful for some people to be in a polyamorous relationship. On the other hand, now see, again, it's going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, trying to please everybody. I think that if I don't have really high quality platonic relationships, then I can't really speak to whether or not this is a fair thought experiment, because it seems to me that for those of us using sex as a way of getting close to people, we're not really genuinely close, because sex itself contaminates the experience and makes it a little bit muddier. And I don't mean contaminated in the sense of making it dirty, but just making it harder to see. Are we really in love? Are we really supportive of each other? Or does it just feel that way? Because the great thing about falling in love and having sex is I am getting lots of vitamin A. I'm getting affirmation. I'm getting a sense of approval. I'm getting affection. I'm getting all these wonderful things that come with the sexuality. So, to be able to say, well, if it were non-sexual, would you be feeling it? And yeah, a lot of us feel it even in the first church experience we have, only later to realize, oh, this really wasn't what it was cracked up to be. So you take things for checking. If you're listening to this and you're interested in monogamy, I'd say, yeah, try being in a monogamous relationship. If you're interested in polyamory, please go ahead and give it a try and see how it works for you and what's there and what's not there. For me, I find monogamy much more helpful in terms of establishing intimacy, because there are so many fewer variables. But perhaps it's more challenging for other people given their circumstance. So apparently no one's getting a straight answer out of me today.
Well, that's good to keep it open-ended. And I mean, we're not here to, come up with answers, but direct and
really.
Well,
really?
I mean, the views thing is an answer, but I mean, for these, they're more, I think this is just more of an individual thing, but it is, I don't know.
Well, it is. And I think it really depends on the people with whom one gets involved. I think
that too.
There's just so many different demographics out there. And, if I was in a polycule with a bunch of people who were, let's say, self-absorbed narcissists, I don't think that would work for me.
Yeah, that would be hard.
Right.
Yeah.
But neither would monogamy.
Yes.
So, it's just, there's just so many things to figure out. And I think for me, simpleton that I am, just evaluating one person at a time, it seems so much easier.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
Cool. Well, thanks, Steve. And thank you for that listener question. And thank you all for listening. And we'll catch you all next week.